Hello Griffin Scopers, welcome back into the sound booth on this rather wetty October afternoon. So today we are going to be doing a part 2 on Doria Ragland. In part 1 we explored her character and personality traits. This is obviously the outer expression of one's personality. Today we're going much more into the soul birth cards, which depict what the person's life lessons are. So before I begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're almost at 4,000 guys, amazing. And actually I'd be quite happy with 4,000 to be honest, if no one else subscribed. Also, please don't forget, if anybody would like a private reading with me, then do get in touch. My email address is in the description box. Everything today that comes out of my mouth onto the table is purely for entertainment purposes only, and therefore must be taken as such. And without further ado, let's pan the camera down and have a look at Doria's cards, see what she's got. So with the soul cards, these are going to be the energies that are running around her life from birth through till death. They do not change. Sometimes it might be the Hierophant that's taking center stage in her life. Sometimes it might be the Temperance. But whatever they are, they're going to be impactful. They're always going to be around, giving her the life lessons that she needs to learn and grow from, basically. So it's a little bit as well, I would say, about or like unlocking your spiritual DNA, looking at your soul birth cards. It's about who you truly are, what's going to be on the life path. And for her, like I said, it's going to be the Hierophant and the Temperance. So her core energy or essence when it comes to the Hierophant is all about learning what one's moral values and ethics are, and also learning about timeless truths. So you know how our grannies or our mums or grandfathers always handed us down traditionally different home truths. If you do it this way, it'll work out, trust me. All that kind of thing. But it's about going with the grain, with the Hierophant. Okay, you don't go against the grain, you go with it. You do things by the book. It's about following a conventional path. And in a life that embodies the Hierophant energy, the person may find actual purpose in studying within institutions, because this is a card that represents institutions in and of themselves. It could be about embodying a teacher role, and we know that Doria has been a yoga teacher, wasn't it? And there may be roles of counsellor, that would go well with this card. Social work would also go with this card. Also even a priest, because this is often called the card of the Pope, if not the Hierophant. So it's someone who brings wisdom into everyday life, offers that to the community, a character that people in the community can really kind of lean into and trust their advice would be worth its weight in gold. However, there are strands of Doria's life that seem to echo themes of the Hierophant that are in reverse. Now just notice as I pop that card right up into camera, you can see a key there. So upright, the key would open all the right doors. You know, you get that qualification to be a social worker. In the reverse, then it tends to open the wrong doors, or the doors that open mistruths. So it can be evocative of rebellion against tradition when it's in reversed, a kind of bucking of the system sort of a vibe, or an unconventional way of doing things. So this could show up in Doria's relationship. For example, the reversal of gender roles. The man can be bringing up the child as Thomas Markle Sr. did with Meghan. And it can also show up in mixed race relationships and alternative spiritual orientation. So Doria's marriage to Thomas Sr. took place at the Self-Realization Temple in Hollywood, and the Self-Realization Fellowship breaks away from mainstream dogma and conventional expectations and rejects rigid forms of an organized religion in order to embrace a much more universal and alternative spiritual path. Their interracial marriage itself was unconventional because, you know, way back in 1979, surveys from the late 1970s show that while acceptance of interracial marriage was slowly rising, the majority of Americans disapproved. So even in relatively diverse cities like Los Angeles, interracial couples could still face prejudice, judgment, or subtle exclusion from both sides of whatever cultures. And in 1979, a black woman and a white man marrying was still rare. Not by these days, of course, but rarity alone can make something still appear alternative. So this gave their union a kind of a countercultural theme, spiritual but not dogmatic, and it feels kind of more aligned with the broader 1970s trends of breaking away from, you know, upright Hierophant tradition. So the Hierophant in reverse can represent New Ager spirituality. Someone who seeks spirituality outside of, you know, the church walls. There's been all sorts of rumours and labels as well that have been put on Doria. Everything from witchcraft, which would go with the Hierophant reversed, voodoo, Santeria, priestess, I think Lady C said. You know, all allegedly. But we do know that she has been a yoga teacher, really heavily into meditation, heavily into alternative therapies and spirituality that doesn't fit mainstream molds of the Hierophant upright. So in 1970s, meditation and yoga, holistics, was still seen as something that was really exotic, not by today's standards, of course, but back then, definitely something, you know, that was outside of the box. So one of Doria's life lessons with that Hierophant energy is about learning to live by what's true and authentic, what has, you know, a moral, excuse me, and spiritual compass. Because spiritual truth doesn't have to be dogmatic or traditional, but does need to be lived within, you know, ethical values and also integrity. So because the Hierophant carries that mantle of trust, if a person fails to live up to those values, the fall from grace can be quite dramatic. You know, it really shakes people's sense of order and trust. You know, if you thought you could really lean into that person and trust them, and they do something that goes against the grain in reverse, then, you know, it's a huge red flag. So when scandals in, you know, religious, spiritual institutions or politics or social work or monarchy or or just among, you know, moral authorities, the scandals are amplified tenfold. So the hypocrisy of someone who takes the moral high ground, but in private, you know, they steal, they cheat, they misuse their power under the Hierophant's robe, if you will, of respectability. If that doesn't match the public face, yeah, we get red flags, huge red flags. So public judgment, gossip, disgrace, all these things would go with the Hierophant reversed. So the life lesson here is about living through example, practicing what you preach so that the inside actually matches the outward projection. So the Hierophant archetype is the respected one. That's why Hierophant in shadow can be such a stark contrast. You know, if the robe of sacred spiritual authority hides corruption, hypocrisy, or financial fraud, for instance, it shakes the love and trust of everyone who turned to that person and who looked for that figure for guidance. So the lesson with the Hierophant is to be who you say you are. So the inside matches the outside. There's transparency there. So Doria's other soul card is the Temperance. So outwardly, Doria seems to embody the Temperance card perfectly. So at first glance, calm, serene, balanced, composed, all that good stuff. She appears graceful, grounded, quite measured when navigating media scrutiny and public curiosity without any kind of visible agitation there. So the perfect Temperance archetype of harmony, patience, and poise, the angel of balance, if you will. So Temperance is the perfect alchemist, blending together opposites into a perfect unison. Now in shadow, because this is a figure of an angel, in reverse we get a demon, blending a toxic mixture of suppressed emotions, unspoken truths, and coerced compromises that erodes and corrodes the soul beneath the calm and polished exterior. So just like water and oil do not blend, they always eventually separate, or say fire and water, extremes that clash or extinguish. Or when you think of magnets, when you put north and north poles of the magnets together so that they face each other, the energy literally repels. They push back, making it impossible for the two forces to actually merge naturally. Now, Megan appears to kind of silence Doria, suppressing her words or opinion, giving her mother the death stare as a kind of energetic repulsion. So just like the north to north poles of the magnet, Doria's natural instincts to assert herself are kind of pushed back, creating a tension that swirls beneath the surface. So every time she tries to speak or correct a narrative, she feels that force of Megan's disapproval, the north to north magnet, and thus Doria's alchemy here becomes very stuck and toxic. you know, hence Doria has to self-censor a lot, I would say, in public, and seems to choose altogether to say absolutely nothing at all. So these elements which refuse to mix here create an inner conflict. They don't go away. You know, underneath the surface, there's going to be frustration and resentment and a psychic friction that erodes Doria's autonomy. So Temperance, you know, wants to nurture and harmonize, and one wonders if Doria's obedience has actually turned into servitude rather than guidance, especially where Archie and Lil are concerned, and whether her caregiving has actually been kind of co-opted and repurposed into a toxic blend, and her care may have turned and kind of run the risk of becoming more like slavery than, you know, a natural flow of energy where caregiving kind of serves others' demands rather than Doria's own choices. So the life lesson here with Temperance is to separate healthy nurturing versus or over self-sacrifice. So if Doria, you know, calm, she's silent and obedience, if that's all in exchange for, say, for instance, allegedly financial reward, then Temperance would be warning that the alchemy is still skewed, it's still off kilter, because true harmony isn't transactional. You know, the financial rewards may soothe Doria on the surface, but it cannot heal inner friction or resentment under the surface created by, you know, a suppressed voice and coerced compliance. So calm is lovely, but not if it's at the cost of your own autonomy. Silence, while graceful, still carries a cost. So a quick whistle stop through some of Doria's life lessons there. Not all, you know, just some of the main ones. I want to get into some oracle cards, and I want to ask the question. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the Markle family very, very rarely, if at all, speak out or say anything. I'm going to take that about Doria whatsoever. They don't really talk about her, do they? So why is that? Why do the Markles not speak out about Doria? So we'll wait till we get a flyer, guys. Why do the Markle family not really speak out? Okay. I'm just going to take the top one because it looks like there's more. Yeah, let's go with that one. Look at that. I'm talking about family. Family, blood ties, inner circle. And then look at that. We've got third parties, haters, lessons learned, karmics. A karmic life lesson learned. So I wonder if there's lessons that have been learned when they've spoken out about her. Okay, I'll pop those back in. I want to ask the Oracle another question. What does Doria think of Megan? What does Doria think of Megan? Show us the energy, please. I'm going to put those back in because I only want one flyer. What does Doria think of Megan? What does Doria think of her daughter? What does she truly think? Cards are jumpy. What does Doria truly think of Megan? Show us the energy, show us the energy, show us the energy. What does Doria truly think, truly think? Wow. Trapped, stuck, no options, unforgiveness. That's incredible. Everything I was just saying about, you know, loss of autonomy, silenced. Okay, let's go to pendulum next. So, right for a yes, left for a no, up and down for a maybe, stop for a block. All for entertainment purposes only. Is Doria being silenced or controlled by Megan? Is Doria being silenced or controlled by Megan? And we get a yes for that. Huge. Wowzers. Okay. Is Doria being paid for her silence? Is Doria paid for her silence? Is Doria being paid for her silence? Interesting. Another yes. Okay. Is she resentful toward Megan? So according to that oracle card, absolutely. Is Doria resentful towards Megan? Lots of energy in the pendulum today. That's another yes. And then my last question would be, has Doria actually walked out on Megan? Is there a rift? Is there a rift between Doria and Megan? Is there a rift that's going on? Is there a rift? Yep. Has she walked out? Did Doria walk out? Had enough? Did she walk out? And that's a yes. So we notice all the nuances in the pendulum. You noticed it went up and down for a while. And my guess is that she would have been thinking about walking out for quite a while, maybe even threatened it, and then actually went through with it and did it. Okay, let's get to some charms next. Dig deep. Oh, wow. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I'm impartial. But look at that. It's a friggin' spaceship, guys, with an alien in it. So this kind of, well, this does remind me of her. You know, she graciously glides through human drama, everything that's going on around her, the crazy daughter, with a kind of otherworldly grace of an alien. So she might feel as well a sense of alienation, I would say, you know, watching in some of the, you know, media situations that she's been in, watching but not emotionally kind of participating, detached, dissociated, safe in her little spaceship, but isolated, just like the hermit energy we talked about in her character cards on the last video. So while she drifts around in her spaceship, in her quiet little orbit there, you know, quite isolated. Okay, brilliant. Okay, interesting. So we've got a, let me just get this right. So we've got a dolphin that's jumping through a hoop. I bet she's had to jump through a few hoops for sure. We've got, I guess that's a dollar bill. It's not English. some kind of a dollar bill, so money. And then lastly, well, we've seen a few of these emerge over the last week. A pumpkin, a jack-o'-lantern, which is supposed to keep away bad spirits on the night of Halloween. So quite seasonal. Okay guys, that's that. Drop your comments in the box below. Let me know what you thought of that one. Incredible oracle cards today, and our pendulums all seem to back up what I said in the reading. The oracle cards seem to back everything up, so I think we got somewhere with this one. Okay, don't forget to like and subscribe. Get in touch if you want a personal reading. You fly well, my friends, and let's raise the energy a little bit higher. Higher, higher, higher. Okay, bye for now. I'll see you on the next.